according to Gamers Nexus, Newegg has been running what amounts to a scam.
Yeah.
So what exactly is it? And I am expecting to be able to contribute at least a little bit of my experience actually having worked on the retail side of things. But let's go on and let's kind of walk through what happened here. According to Gamers Nexus, the problem is that customers are being denied refunds for ineligible products, specifically motherboards. The problem with this is that the motherboards are often new in box. Apparently, consumers who buy motherboards on Newegg are being denied refunds for what are claimed to be ineligible products. Except that this doesn't make any sense because apparently the motherboards are often new in box. So Newegg makes the claim that the CPU sockets have customer-caused damage to the CPU pins, and they're saying that that's their reason for withholding funds from people seeking an RMA. Gamers Nexus stumbled into this situation by returning a $500 motherboard that was purchased but no longer required, which they actually mentioned in their refund request. Newegg responded that customer-caused damage had been done to the CPU pins and denied Gamers Nexus's RMA. I gotta say, when we've done things like Secret Shopper in the past, we've actually jumped through a lot of hoops, even going as far as to use the credit cards of relatives of employees when placing orders to ensure that no one catches that it's us. And apparently,
you didn't even need to.
Gamers Nexus can just contact customer support for Newegg, get some rube who has no idea who they are, who denies them an RMA for some BS reason, because, and we know that this is BS, Gamers Nexus never opened the motherboard. It was a brand new inbox motherboard. Now, for the uninitiated, LGA sockets are very fragile. They have these little tiny pins in them. Have you ever bent them?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. They are extremely easy to accidentally bend, and once you bend them,
Here,
I can bleep you. Let's try and time it. Ready? Once you bend them, you're
fucked.
I hope we got it. Pretty much.
We tried.
You can sometimes perform delicate surgery.
Kind of pick them up. Sometimes if you just squish them down, you can lift them back up again.
Yeah.
But it's a little sketchy. And everyone's a little spooked about that socket from there on. So
yeah, absolutely.
You're always concerned. You never want to swap that CPU out once you get it working.
And typically a brand new board comes with a hard plastic shield over those delicate pins to protect them during shipping. But in spite of this, many retailers actually require a visual inspection of the socket at the point of sale, just as a way of covering their own butts. Because, and I can tell you this from experience, how often it happens that customers claim they didn't touch it or claim that it was unopened when actually they did touch it and actually it was not unopened.
And people are going to do that for sure.
Is a lot more than you'd think, because I think for a lot of people, the rationalization is as simple as I simply cannot afford another motherboard, and a lot of people cannot. That's just reality. This was literally everything I had. I need to do something. I feel like this wasn't my fault. The universe conspired against me. Like whatever hoops they jump over
so they
to
piracy.
To rationalize it. He's not going to let this go. I'm trying to move on today. I told him before the show started, I was like, look, I'm not going to have any hot takes today. I'm keeping it ice cold.
Like in an LTT water bottle.
Like in this water bottle. LTTstore.com.
Yeah.
No hot takes today. He keeps drawing me back in. So it is extremely common
for customers to do that?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, point of clarification. Gamers Nexus's motherboard was brand new to him, but it was open box. Okay, so they did actually buy a refurbished motherboard in the first place, but they had not opened it.
It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, which doesn't matter for the purposes of our conversation here. For Gamers Nexus, they had never touched the motherboard. They never even opened the box. Yes, it was opened at some point. So anyway, coming back to customers claiming that they didn't touch stuff, the amount of times that we have seen obvious physical damage in the form of everything from shorts that were not from a capacitor being soldered on backwards, like like Asus's recent fiasco, or like water damage, right? Like really bad stuff, is a lot more than you'd think. And I think that most people out there, most of you in the chat, are probably by and large imagining that people who would try to pull that kind of scam are few and far between. But from my experience, it's absolutely not true. It's not true. There's a lot of people out there. Like I'd worked in retail and had people try and pull one over on me all the time. But because I'm pretty savvy,
is that potentially an exposure problem? Because like I remember when I worked at Geek Squad, I used to think, and I mean they weren't exactly doing great, but I used to think that HP laptops were just the worst thing ever, because it was like the only thing that we would ever get coming in with problems was HP laptops. And then I was talking to one of my mentors in Geek Squad, and he was like, well, have you looked at like the sales numbers that we're pushing through the store for laptops? I'm like, well, no. And then he pointed out that it's like 80-something% HP laptops at that time. So he's like, what do you think's going to come back? I was like, okay. They weren't great, obviously.
Yep.
But it still was skewed by that type of stuff. Do you think it's potentially an exposure problem? You were noticing these issues largely? Like, what percentage of RMA things do you think were actual user problems that they were covering up?
Oh, absolutely. Most of them were legitimate problems. But what I'm trying to say is that if you see 100 threads on Reddit of people claiming that something was physically damaged out of a new box, a not insignificant percentage of them are lying.
I mean, you see a lot of that kind of stuff across the board.
Divided says your experience is also outdated. You're right. In the last 12 years, people have gotten so much better and more honest. That's absolutely a thing that happened.
We've definitely seen that globally. We've seen a really positive trend.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this across the board, right? You see this with cheaters in video games. You see this with everything. So
okay.
Who knows?
Now, let's talk about the other possibility here, okay? Because Gamers Nexus purchased an open box motherboard, it is entirely possible that it was actually a missed bent pin or missed socket damage from the previous customer. You know what else is possible? It's possible that this particular motherboard, there could have been nothing wrong with it at all. We haven't actually gotten word from Newegg about that particular possibility. And I've actually got an additional possibility for you. There's a lot of people in chat that are like, so Linus says blame the customer? No, that's not what I said. I said that it's absolutely a possibility. So don't take, what I'm saying is don't take one side automatically at all, because there are a lot of different possible outcomes. Now, for the motherboard itself, the odds that the retailer damaged the socket are extremely low.
Yeah.
Like minusculely low, because even at NCIX, where we did put our own label on motherboards up until like 2007 or something like that, even though they obviously have serial numbers, I was like, why are we doing this? Why do we put our own serial number on every product? They were like, because that's the way we've always done it. I'm like, okay, sure, I guess so. 2006, it's 2008, I don't remember, but sometime around there, they actually put their own labels on everything.
I think I remember that.
So even though NCIX did that, they actually had a way of doing it that they wouldn't even open up the tape over the ESD bag on the motherboard. They would slit the bag, slide in using a knife, slide in the thing, press it down and pull the knife out and apply it that way. So there is no reason for a retailer to open up the box of a product other than the one that they might open to take pictures, and you'd notice if the socket was bent. In fact,
I mean, even that one would just be sold as open box.
Probably, but that's another thing. Okay, motherboards don't come shrink wrapped.
Okay, because something I've been thinking of this whole time is wouldn't they said they didn't open it, wouldn't it just be shrink wrapped? But yeah,
no. So that's something that I have wondered about for many years.
Really, this is a $500 board though. A lot of high-end boards, don't they have a sticker over the?
Not necessarily.
No?
Motherboard manufacturers, for whatever reason, and I've never actually asked, but I've always been
less
curious.
plastic's good. I'm not against that.
But motherboard manufacturers do not generally shrink wrap even their very high-end products. And it seems to me that if they really wanted to put this to rest forever, sealing the product would probably be a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. I have seen bent pins in sockets.
GeoMaster337 on Flowplane Chat said, but Gamers Nexus didn't open the box it was shipped in.
Okay, that's a whole separate conversation. Okay. We're not even talking about the Gamers Nexus scenario in
Just
particular
in general.
right now. I'm talking about in general, because here's the problem. I have had this experience. I have had the experience of opening up a brand new board, and because I'm me, it didn't even go to a retailer. It came straight from the manufacturer, and I was the first person to open it, and I've seen bent pins. So, what I'm saying right now is that let's take every account of this happening with a grain of salt, understanding that there are multiple possibilities here. A possibility is that the customer is lying. Another possibility is that because motherboards do not come in sealed packages, the retailer could easily be, let's say, for example, throwing together a quick test bench in order to something, putting it really nicely back into the box and selling it as new. That's a possibility. Possibility number 3, it could have just actually been bent straight from the factory. So there are 3 possible avenues for actual damage to the CPU socket.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of Steve's, what I suspect is most likely, because this was an open box board in the first place, is that whoever RMA'd it in the first place,
Validation was poor.
whether that damage came from the factory or whether they caused it, they managed to get one in under the radar. Whoever was the tech at Newegg who inspected it, or maybe didn't even bother, I don't know. Whoever was the tech who inspected it didn't catch the bent pin. It can be a little bit tricky to see them sometimes. You need to get it just right.
Yeah.
And it ended up back on the shelf, and it was sent to Steve. Now, because Steve didn't actually open the box, he actually wouldn't know if there was any thermal compound on the socket, or if it had any bent pins, or if there was any other kind of physical damage to it, because he never looked at it. And then Newegg is basically going, well, it's impossible that there was anything wrong with it before we sent it, which, by the way, as I already outlined for you guys, is not
true.
Impossible. Yeah. Doing a typical computer retailer thing, which is going, not my problem, and pushing it back to the customer. Do I think that Newegg is actually running some kind of concerted scam where they are trying to take people's RMA motherboards back and keep their money? I sincerely doubt it. I feel like that's the kind of thing that would be whistleblown at some point.
Do you think they could be pushing those people to be abnormally strict, though?
I think...
So not like a concerted scam of like, hey, RMA specialist people, just refuse all of them, tell them all they have socket damage. But like maybe weighing really heavily on employee reviews or something, on like, oh, you accepted too many motherboards with sketchy pins, and being really, really, really hard on them.
Well, the right amount of motherboards to accept with sketchy pins from a Newegg point of view, where apparently you're making the assumption that it can't happen, would be 0. Yeah. And here's another problem, is that the retailer is often the first line of defense against the customer, when a lot of the time it's actually not their policy. So here's something that you guys might not realize, is that ASUS, Gigabyte, and MSI, they also, ASRock for that matter, they also live in a magical fantasy land where it is entirely impossible for a motherboard to leave their factory with bent pins in it. So if you try to RMA, as a retailer, if you try to RMA a motherboard with socket damage, they will refuse it, and you will be out the entire value of that motherboard. So the question now to ask is, okay, where should this burden lie? Should it lie with Newegg, knowing that, and I know this for a fact, people damage things and lie about it? Should it lie with Newegg? Should it lie with the manufacturer? Should it lie with the consumer? The honest answers to all three of those questions are no.
Yeah.
Because there is so much uncertainty. Who should have to eat it every single time? Because I can tell you guys, the retailer does not make the kind of margin that you might imagine that they do.
I know a lot of motherboards get individually validated. I don't know if that's true about everything. But $500 board might.
Part of individual validation is potentially screwing it up.
Yeah, but I wonder how expensive documenting that validation would be. Because if you could have like photo evidence of your socket as it's leaving, and if someone's like, "Oh, this was screwed up at the manufacturer," and they can be like, "Nope, picture." That would kind of exclude one of those. And then if I think especially for open box products, if Newegg would document the status of the product as it's being repackaged, that would probably help their stance as well.
So the problem is that Newegg's whole situation with Gamers Nexus was a comedy of errors. So it's a lot more than just this debate over pins, which I did want to talk about because there's a lot of there are sides of it that I feel like people might not have considered.
Yeah.
The issue though is that he never opened the board. Newegg claimed there was thermal compound in the socket, despite the motherboard never having been opened by him. And making problems even worse, they actually asked to have the board sent back to them. Newegg claimed they sent it back, and then so far, to my knowledge, has not actually provided a tracking number. I guess, yeah, what I want to know is I want to hear from you guys if you've had the same experience. I want you guys to know that there's probably a mixture of blame to go around. It certainly doesn't all lie on Newegg. However, in the case of what happened with Steve, it looks like it's pretty clear that this was either Newegg screwing up or Newegg ripping him off. And it's very hard for me to tell exactly which one. Either way, they picked the wrong guy to screw with. Like,
yeah.
I would absolutely be creeping like major tech media outlets and seeing who works there and making sure that they're all just on the do-fly list.
Yeah, I didn't even really want to say it because like I don't want to give them ideas, but yeah.
Like I would.
If I worked there, like why would you not?
I would absolutely
do that.
And
like, yes, your company should have standards that are high enough that it shouldn't matter.
Absolutely.
But
I would make sure
yeah.
that if Stephen Burke buys something from LTTstore.com and sends in a support ticket, he is getting the white glove service. I will personally, Stephen Burke, I will personally reply to your support ticket. Oh, crap. I probably won't.
Yeah, now you have to tell the customer support people that.
Yeah, no, what? Forget. You know what? I take it back. I will not personally reply to your support ticket.
Oh, man. You guys should have a reverse policy where, like, if Stephen Burke buys something on LTT Store, you, like, screw him over.
I know, right? We should just ship him a bag of sand at his cost.
Oh, man. Like, this is how companies usually treat you, so it's probably fine.
Yeah, exactly. You're used to it. You're used to it, Steve.
Give them the Newegg special.
Yeah, I love it.